city of Moore in 2016. He was previously the city's finance director, and before going to Moore, was the finance director for the city of Lyon. Brooks is a 30-plus year CPA and serves on the CMA board as the District 5 representative. In March, Mike started his career as a city manager for Sand Springs after serving 28 years with the police department, where he retired after 5 years as the chief of police. During his service, he managed several flood operations, the 2007 ice storm, and the 2013 tornado, which struck Sand Springs. He also had the honor of serving at the scene of the 1995 bombing at the Alfred P. Murrah building in Oklahoma City. So it's my pleasure again to introduce Brooks and Mike.
Thank you. Appreciate the introduction. Thanks for hanging around late in the afternoon. I know we're what's in between dinner and other entertainment, so at least I'll try and make it as interesting as I can, because I know Mike will. So my part of the presentation is I'm going to kind of walk through what happened in Moore on the May 20th, 2013 tornado and the communication that we had and what all went on with that. So 9 days before the storm hit, we were already getting information with the weather forecast that it was likely going to be a day of severe storms and a tough day on May the 20th. So we already knew, well beforehand that it might be a tough day. And so the weather up until that day was good. But by May the 19th, which was Sunday, we all knew that the 20th was going to be a tough day for someone. We weren't sure where the storms were going to go exactly, and certainly not how big they were going to be, but we knew someone was going to get hit, and it, probably wasn't going to be very good. That morning, the early morning heat and humidity was just further warning of the storms to come. I mean, I remember walking outside and, just drenched in sweat just in, a couple of minutes. It was that kind of a day. There in the picture was our command center during this time. At the top of the screen was Gary Bird, who was our fire chief then. Greg Herbster in the middle was the deputy fire chief and is now the fire chief. And then Steve Eady, who was the city manager then. So we were waiting for the National Weather Service briefing to start at 10 o'clock. So this was the briefing that they gave us, the slides, and a lot of I think pretty much everyone in this room have sat through a few of these things, by now, and so you see a lot of the similar language and similar slides and all this stuff. The thing that jumps out at me, though, is the slide in the lower left kind of indicates that the storms were going to occur like they normally do, late afternoon, early evening. But the information that the Weather Service was telling us was, no, these were going to be early afternoon storms. And so that created other issues because school was going to still be in session, it would still be in the middle of the workday, it wasn't going to be an after work type thing. And then the expected storm development track there on the bottom right, it's kind of hard to see because of the shadows. So we got this briefing. Briefing started at 10. It lasted, for about 30 minutes, and so then we immediately sent this to Moore Public Schools just to make sure that they had this information and what they wanted to do as far as were they going to cancel classes for the rest of the day, were they going to cancel their evening activities, what exactly were they going to do. And the problem that a lot of people had during this time was, well, are we safer staying where we are, or do we want to dismiss class and then potentially have a bunch of people out on the streets when the storm might hit? So that was, that's always a tough call. So this was the email that the superintendent of Moore Schools at the time, Susie Pierce, sent. So they did go ahead and cancel the evening activities, but they did not cancel school for the rest of the day. They opted to stay on. And so another slide that we got from the National Weather Service and the storm area. They hadn't really zoned in on the storm path. This was at 1:10 p.m. in the afternoon, And it's hard to see on the slide, but still, we're 2 hours before this tornado hits Moore, and there is a low chance of an EF2 tornado hitting. So, needless to say, it came in much bigger and much stronger than anything that we anticipated was going to happen. And this was, this was the 5th major tornado that Moore had in a 15-year period. Had an EF5 in '99, another one in 2003, 2005, and then we had one a couple of years after this that was a smaller one in 2015. So unfortunately, the city of Moore was no stranger to these storms, but still, we weren't expecting an EF5 based on all the information we've been given. The Newcastle schools, late that morning, they went ahead and they went ahead and canceled school for the rest of the day because they felt like they might be in the path of the storm, and it was they felt it was in their best interest to go ahead and cancel classes and let people get home and take care of things that way. So this is just kind of a timeline of everything that happened that day. So we posted the weather briefing on our Facebook page at 11:45. At 1:18 that afternoon, we tweeted out the tornado watch had been issued. So that was, about an hour and 40 minutes before the storm actually hit. The television stations had already been cutting in and out, providing updates. Again, at 1:10, we're still an EF2. This says moderate, other slides say low. Where schools canceled their events. We sent out our spotters at 1:52, which was a little more than an hour before the tornado hit. Severe thunderstorm warning issued at 2:12. And then we had the take warning cover that we tweeted out at 2:46. Hit the button. So here's a quick little 32-second video. Thank you. So the storm came in the west side of the city, kind of middle part of the city. It stayed about a mile south of City Hall that day. It took 15 minutes. So 15 minutes and killed 21 people, destroyed a elementary school. I think it was 9 children that died in that. We removed 172,817 tons of debris in 100 days. And then in the entire Oklahoma City metro area, not just Moore, the estimate of the damage was $2 billion. And so a lot of you know where the Warren Theater is in Moore. All of the area around that was destroyed. The Warren Theater itself was fine, but everything else around that was destroyed. The hospital was destroyed, a bowling alley was destroyed, other businesses, numerous homes to the east and west. So that, even though we got word out and felt our communication was pretty good, we were obviously Tornado Alley at that point. Within an hour of the storm, we were getting all kinds of media requests, especially international media requests. So this was 8 years ago, and back then news traveled fast. We were getting phone calls from Europe and Australian media outlets. So post-storm, what the city felt like they needed to do in order to better protect itself in the future, the Moore Public Schools built safe rooms in each of their schools, and they now close early in anticipation of predicted inclement weather. In 2016, there was another one of these days that was forecasted, and so it kind of felt the same way. And so the more schools closed down, I mean, the day before they announced we're going to be closed, and fortunately nothing happened that day. I mean, that's what you always hope for, is you have severe weather forecasts, and then for whatever reason nothing happens. That's what happened that time, and so that was good. The command center in the City of Moore Public Safety Building opened. That was actually under construction when the 2013 tornado hit. Galen Kitch, who's our emergency management director, he was in that room also, but there in that room, there's room for Galen and maybe one other person. So, not really the desirable command center that you want. The command center that we have now in our public safety building, it's got a room that's probably, I don't know, a fourth the size of this room, but has, all the equipment and technology that you need, and room for all the city officials that need to make whatever decisions that need to be made during these events. And then we changed our residential building codes. So the homes that are built now in Moore, they have to withstand higher wind speeds. The garage doors have to withstand wind speeds of 135 miles an hour. They have to have storm shelters in the new homes. We did get grants for storm shelters for other people that wanted to put them in, and so I believe there were about 1,000 people that took advantage of this, and so they put storm shelters in their homes. So the City of Moore is a little, infrastructure-wise, is a little better off now as far as being able to deal with one of these things, but still the communication is what's important, and getting the word out, and knowing the actual chain of command and how to do that. And with that, I will turn part of the presentation over to Mike.
Thank you. That was a tremendous day. I was out, and I remember that day because I responded out because we knew the storms were coming up, and it was kind of watching it in slow motion, and your heart went out for what Moore went through, and then you were kind of anticipating what it might do as it came up the turnpike. And so it was a hard day. Types of emergency communications. Some of this, as everybody knows, we have the pre-emergency communications, which is probably some of the most neglected part of emergency communications, because it's not that people don't feel that sense of urgency. The in progress, which is the one that's the easiest, because that's when everybody's in tune to what's going on and they want to know what's going on. And then the recovery communications. Pre-emergency communications, you have the public information and education meetings, planning sessions with staff and elected officials, training like NIMS, incident command, etc., hazard mitigation planning, and consider pre-position contracts for debris and landfill. The pre-emergency communications, public information, education meetings, the advantages, they're interactive. You can target specific populations, and the limitations are you must have the ability to stay on message. Sometimes people will want to hijack your meetings and talk about other things when they have grievances that aren't related to that. They'll want to hijack your meetings, talk about other things. And they may expose you to difficult questions. We all have funding limitations, and so everybody wants government to be all things and all solving, and sometimes the answer is we don't have the money to have a public shelter that will fit 20,000 people in that shelter. And they don't understand why the city of Sand Springs doesn't have a shelter on every block for them for tornadoes. And why is that my responsibility as a citizen? So you have to be able to answer those questions. Public information education meetings, identify your objectives. Know going into the meeting what the objective is for that meeting. Prepare official and experts in advance. Make sure you have the people that are qualified to talk about that topic there. Prepare a statement and hand out material. And that is good not only for them understanding at that time, but that is materials they can take with them and have in preparation, especially if it's something, an event that your community has on a regular basis. Sand Springs has one community that, or one neighborhood that floods periodically. And so we have special materials to hand out to those because we have people that come and go from that neighborhood. Anticipate your difficult and sensitive questions and make provisions to comply with all legal requirements. A lot of your materials, if you have a population in your that is speaks other than English, you might want to consider making those also people that might need other assistance. You know, and you see during events, you'll see people using translators, you know, for the hearing impaired and such like that. So it's good to have those resources and know where you're going to get them in time of need. Planning sessions with staff and elected officials. If you have a common issue of flooding, get a plan from the past experiences. Learn from those experiences and adapt and put those in, and then train people annually on what those are going to be if it's an ongoing issue. Plan for items that take time to procure. In Sand Springs, we have the Meadow Valley subdivision. It floods. Sometimes it'll go years, and then other times we'll have it do it multiple times. We've part of the neighborhood's been bought out by FEMA, but the last time a flood event happened, we were out there for about a week helping them recover from that flood. One of the criticisms we got is y'all are doing a great job, you're protecting us, and we got a lot of kudos for that, but they said, we're trying to go in and out on this recovery, and your officers are stopping us every time we go into the neighborhood, and it's getting irritating. And we got to thinking about that, and that was a fair criticism. So now we've taken the time, before it floods again, we have a box of parking passes that say Meadow Valley resident on the front of them. They're in a box. We might not use them for 20 years, but next time, and it will flood next time. Next time it floods, we're prepared for that, and we've told them what our plan is going to be, and they know that those parking passes are going to be there. That way, we can restrict access to only residents. But during the event is not the time to try to go get something like that printed up. Document, because when the criticism comes that you all weren't prepared for this event, you can document all the prior time, all the past sessions you've had, and you can show that you were prepared. Training NIMS Incident Command, it's best to hold annually. Discuss roles and responsibilities. The council has their role during an event and after an event and before an event, but everybody needs to know their roles. That is not the time you need the mayor trying to come in and take over the EOC. He needs to know what his role is, and his role or her role is a very defined one, but it's also a very important one, but they need to know what their role is. Same thing with each members of staff. Not every person who's employed by the city needs to be in the Emergency Operations Center, and they need to know who has access to there. So everybody needs to know what role they play. Discuss the limitations of each role. Set expectations of communication between the council and staff, and get documentation. Hazard mitigation planning. If you don't have a hazard mitigation plan, you need one. And if you have a grant through the state, they normally require that you do have one, but they're not. It is a good way for you to prepare for those events, and we've now added to ours things that we never thought we would have. We have a pandemic portion in there now, and so we need to think about how we're going to do those and how we're going to mitigate those before they happen. And work with state EOC. They can help you out. State Emergency Management can. They're a great resource. Consider pre-position contracts, and this is something I'd never considered because I didn't have to before the 2007 ice storm. Sand Springs was like the epicenter for that ice storm. We had a tremendous amount of tree debris, and we hadn't considered how we're going to do that. And so we're in the middle of that. We're trying to get monitoring contracts let. We're trying to get disposal contracts let. Where are we going to do that debris reduction? And that is not a great time when you're in the middle of that type of incident to try to figure that out. I'm sure Moore went through that a lot with all of the man-made debris, the white debris that they were dealing with. And so a pre-positioned contracts is where if you can have those preset, you have your contract prices already set, because we got into a situation on that. People were trying to underbid each other for that, and again, during a incident or right after an incident, that's a hard thing to deal with. So communicating with those contract people is great to do before you ever have a incident. And those could be debris removal, debris monitoring, landfill, towing, heavy equipment. In progress, while we're having an incident, mass notification systems, integrated public alert and warning system, the IPAWS, you'll hear that term, and you can have access to that if you have a system that's compatible with IPAWS and you go through the process to register and get the training. Siren systems and automation, I'll discuss this one in detail. It's something that we found last year, and I became very enamored with it, and we spent money on it, and I think it's going to be a great addition to our city. Message boards, press releases and press conference, flyers, handouts, and then leadership, employee, volunteer, direct connection to citizens, getting that training for your people and how we're going to do that. The mass notification systems. How many people in here have an emergency phone notification system where you can call your residents and you can put a message out there? It's a great tool to have. It's changed over time because of IPAWS. Most people are now transitioning to cell phones, and so these are, unless you have a good way to get people to sign up for them, they're becoming less and less important. IPAWS really covers that ability to get to the cell phones. These systems can, but you have to enroll people in those. We have installed ours. We only use our system for emergencies. So what we did is we took the MSAG data, we populated our system with it, and that way it's all the landline phones. It's still an important part because your elderly sometimes will not have bought into cell phones, and so there's still a reason that you may need to do that reverse 911 is what some people know it by. There are many other companies. These are just some that I found online to use as examples. The IPAWS, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. IPAWS is FEMA's national system for local alerting that provides authenticated emergency and life-saving information to the public through mobile phones using wireless emergency alerts, the radio and television, and via the emergency alert system, and on the National Oceanic NOAA, we'll call it. In order for you to access that, you generally will get that access through one of the systems that you've signed up for. So if you're going to go out to contract, I would make sure that they have that ability to connect to the IPAWS system. This is the new system that we've installed in Sand Springs, and it was much more affordable than I thought it was going to be. It was under $10,000, and what it does is we've been able to have a mapping system that maps all of our storm sirens, and we've actually been able to create some other markers outside of our city, and it will automatically set off our storm sirens if the polygon that the National Weather Service puts over our community for a tornado indicates that our community is in threat, then it will automatically do that. Normally we have staff that's right there ready to set off the warning sirens and to do those types of things, but this is just an added layer. In 2017, our community was hit by a tornado, and in that tornado, Elizabeth and I were in a room getting ready for a meeting, and we were talking, and we had some citizens present, and unexpectedly this storm came, and we weren't expecting any tornadic activity to happen that day. And we ended up getting hit with an EF2 tornado, and I was running over, and it was kind of a panic moment when you're trying to set off those storm sirens in the heat of the moment, and you weren't really expecting it. This system can take that and it can put it out to text message. It can set off your warning sirens. These systems will also let you know if there's any failures of sirens. And so it's generally done on a per siren basis as far as the cost, but I didn't even know such an animal existed. And so we really, we think it's just the greatest thing right now. Message boards. If you're communicating with your public during and after an event, or even for other reasons, message boards are a great thing to have and strategically placed in your community. If you don't have them, maybe have some that are mobile that you can put out in strategic portions. If you've been hit by a tornado and you need to direct people away from an area, these are a great tool to have. Press releases and conferences, identify the objectives, prepare the officials and experts in advance, prepare a statement and hand out materials, anticipate the difficult and sensitive questions, and make provisions to comply with all legal requirements. And this is another time that you'll have, there is a time for elected officials to be that front person if it is a policy type question. But if it is that factual statement that they need and they need directions, a lot of time the public is going to take that better and have more confidence when it's coming from those uniformed chiefs or deputy chiefs, because they're the ones that are boots on the ground doing that work, and that's what the people expect to see. And so answer that by putting those people forward in front of the cameras and on the radio to talk to your public. Flyers and handouts, make clear and concise, avoid acronyms. Government loves acronyms. The people aren't going to understand what those are. Make those clear about what you need to have them understand. Highlight phone numbers and web pages for further information. Having that clear and concise part and then being able to fill in the verbose part of the information you need to know them by a direction to a website is a great way to accomplish your task. Make sure there's no use of logos and headings to bring, make sure you use logos and headings to bring credibility. Consider alternative languages for population to be reached. Pre-print the materials if you're able to, and place copies at all city facilities. When you're dealing with that situation where maybe your communications have been knocked out, do you all have a plan for if your 911 system is down? Do you have a way to communicate with your public if they don't have access to call 911? And in the Tulsa area, we faced that a couple times where the 911 system failed because of the phone lines and such, or maybe cell towers and et cetera. And we have a plan that we put emergency crews at all of our convenience stores. Those are the center of the universe anyway. And so they're visible. They're where people expect to see police officers and firefighters if there's that type of incident. And it's also a good place to put copies of materials if you've needed to put out flyers for the public. Leadership and employee volunteers, the direct communication that we're going to have with the citizens. Make sure that each is briefed on relevant information. People shouldn't be out there doing ad hoc communication to people. They need to stay on message, and it needs to be the approved message and not speculation. After a big incident where you might have had loss of life, you're going to have people and they're going to say, well, do you think everybody's okay in there? And if you have a volunteer that's arrived and they're telling people, oh, I think it's terrible, you're going to panic people needlessly. Give copies of handouts and flyers to minimize contact time. Place officials at high traffic areas such as convenience stores and other communication methods when your communication methods are down. Have a plan for continual operation, not just the first 8 hours. I'm sure when Moore was hit, every police officer in the metro area probably wanted to come down and help. Every firefighter wanted to come down and help. That's the natural reaction. But we have to plan for continual operations, and that means even your own staff. So have a plan where you keep people in reserve, because in big disasters like that, you have to be going for days and weeks, not just the first 8 hours. Emergency recovery communications, recover effort meetings with citizens, agencies, and churches. During our last flood, we were having special meetings with council. We had meetings with specific businesses, our large employers in our community, and Elizabeth was our city manager at the time. She set those up. I would come in, I would speak, we would address the concerns that they had and answer specific questions, and then we had the general information that went out. But we were able to target the information that was important to each segment of the population, whether it be business and others. Maps are important to be able to describe the area. Phone, email, and text. If you don't have the ability to use that and you don't have the list, then you're not going to have them when you need them for those emergency situations. Website and social media, again, it's important to control the narrative. So many people can get on there and hijack on our social media, especially Facebook. All comments are hidden until we approve the comment, because during an incident, and we can see with this current pandemic how much bad information can get out there, and it can sway people's the way they react to the disaster. And so if you have a full-blown tornado or a flood where there's been loss of life, you need to control that narrative so people aren't putting out false information. Also, have a plan for where you're going to put your recovery office. FEMA's going to come in, they're going to offer assistance, but they're going to need some place to stage. And so have a place for them, because it's going to benefit your community in the end if it's a good location where your people can get that assistance in a rapid manner. Recovery communications, recovery effort meetings. Tailor each meeting to the audience. Keep meetings brief and to the point. Have a written agenda. Do not drift to irrelevant minutia. Provide copies of presented materials to minimize covering information that has already been previously presented, and allow for translation for those with hearing disabilities and other disabilities. On maps, whenever possible, use pre-printed maps. This is actually a copy of a map from the 2019 floods, where we were able to communicate at certain levels of coming out of the dam what might be affected. Individual maps for specific areas to minimize confusion. If maps are from data provided from other agencies, give credit, and provide maps electronically to save expense. We've asked for the GIS maps that we can overlay given different cubic feet per second released from the dams, so we can see what infrastructure we might have that would be affected. But you can do the same thing when we had the rolling blackouts during the severe cold we just had last year. We had not ever experienced a rolling blackout like that. And so one of the things we learned is we're going to try to get with PSO. We've asked to have some training sessions with them where they give us scenarios where they say, the SPP has asked for so many megawatts to be taken offline. If we did this area, what would it do to you? Because we think that there needs to be more coordination as to what would happen, but that gets into that communications with your partners. And then again, provide maps electronically to save expense. The phone, email, and text, use mass notification efforts to speed recovery. Consider implementing free business licenses to get contact information. This is something we did this year, and immediately you had the people go, why? This is just a government ruse to get more money. Why do you need business licenses? We provided the business licenses for free, and we wrote into the ordinance that established the business license that they would be free, because our goal is to have good contact information for businesses. And this is not only if they have a large-scale disaster such as a tornado, but it's also for the small scale. If you would have a business that has a water line break inside their business at 3 o'clock in the morning, and a police officer goes by and sees this, you can help save that business a lot of money. But you can only do that if you have that contact information for that business or that resident. So on the business side of it, having those business licenses is key, and you get the information you need. Do not overuse the methods for contacting people. Save them for important information, or they may be ignored. I know my kids' school, when they were of school age, we were getting the 3 times a day text message and phone call about the play that was going to happen, et cetera, and after a while, you stop answering the phone when you see that's the answer. So if you do have the reverse 911 type system, don't use that to advertise new park activities. Use that for emergency situations. So when people see that pop up on their caller ID, they'll accept that phone call, or they'll read that email, or they'll read that text. You must get people to sign up before the disaster. If you want to use it during or after the disaster, you have to have the data. Website, social media advantages, they can be updated quickly. They can incorporate varied media, and they're flexible. Limitations, updates may be only at certain times, and limited message control after sending. And again, if you allow people to respond back to those openly and you don't control the message, then they're going to maybe hijack the thread and take people in the wrong direction. The Recovery Office for FEMA. Help FEMA communicate with your community by providing that office space. Many disaster teams may respond to your area. Provide staging and contact space for them so your community will have the benefit of their services. And pre-construct MOUs for the use of the space to avoid doing so in the middle of an incident. If you know you're going to work with the Red Cross to have shelters, go through their process to get certified so you have a certified space and you have the MOU. That way it's all known as how you're going to conduct business if that shelter is activated. And I know I speak for Brooks, if we can ever be of any help, certainly give us a call. We'd love to be of any assistance we can, and I think we can take any questions you all have. Good. All right. Steve?
How often do you test your reverse 911 system? You said don't overuse it. How often do you test it?
We will send out test messages to ourselves periodically. We don't have to do it to everybody. We have some selected phone numbers of our own that we will send those to just to test the system. So we don't have it on a schedule. We leave that up to the guys who run the emergency management services. Well, we appreciate everybody coming. Oh, CBS.
So I recently saw a deal regarding the Paradise Fire in California where all cell phones disappeared. What have you done, if anything, to prepare your public works staff, for example, to relearn radios?
That's a great question. We started bringing our public works staff online with the trunked radio system that our emergency personnel are on. And that is also not only so they have a redundancy on cell phones, but it's also so in an emergency they can communicate directly to our other emergency management staff. You know, when Steve was talking about what do we consider to be emergency services, it's not just police and fire, it's also your trash, it's your water people, etc. And during a snowstorm, a police car is probably less emergency services than that snow plow. And so we have to have people think of it that way. But having the police officer be able to contact the snowplow directly and say, I need you up here at 12th and McKinley is very important. So if you have that communication where all of your employees can talk cross-band, that's a good thing to do.
Do you have a radio bank that they can access, or do you have them in the public works vehicles already?
We have them in the public works vehicles already, and then we have a certain amount of handhelds. We're on the Oak Wind trunk system, so we have a public works channel, and then we actually have 2 public works channels, and then we have several channels within police and fire. And then if you're on the Oak Wind system or the Tulsa system, that also means that you have state mutual aid SMA channels and you have the RMA channels for regional type issues. And if you have that, I mean, my radio that I had at the police department, I could talk to the Tulsa Airport Fire Department, and I don't know why I'd ever need to talk to them, but we could do it if we needed to. And so having that cross communication where you can talk to every other agency is a good thing. And then you might find that you need one of those channels and it will be non-traditional people using those radios, but being able to put those radios out for other people like volunteers if you had to have them work as monitors in an area or something like that to, if you put a volunteer at a convenience store in the absence of 911, if they have a radio, then they can communicate with that. But having those plans in place is the key.
Is Oak Wind a Homeland Security, or is that Oklahoma Emergency Management System?
Oak Wind is run through, I believe, DPS, and it is it used to be 800 megahertz. It's now it's now gone on to the P25 compliant radios. But you can, in the Tulsa area, we go through the city of Tulsa for ours. I know Owasso has their own tower and repeater, and then you have Broken Arrow and Glenpool. Are you all along with Broken Arrow with the Open Skies? So there's another system, but we do have a bridge that can have that system with Broken Arrow talk to our system, and ultimately that means that we can talk across the state with everybody that's on that system. All right. Well, we'll see everybody back for dinner. 6 o'clock.
Great job, gentlemen.
Thank you.